Afternoon. All right. So, appreciate some of the conversations I've had today with a number of you. And David Lasura and I just had a conversation that brought me back to grade school, and I want to share this with you because it was kind of profound. So, where I went to grade school in the Dakotas, Friday afternoon, you went through a Cold War drill. And you would be shown a film. And the video film clip would show you how to wipe the radiation off of the glass after the big blast. Because evidently you were still alive. And so you'd wipe this radiation off the glass, and so you would clean the food off, and you would do all these things. And then we would have a drill where we would go under our desk. Because we all know, if you're under your desk and the big blast occurs, you're safe because the desk protects you, right? And so then going forward a number of years, maybe 15 years ago now for me, I spent a little time in Russia, and Kathy and I are in Russia, and they sign you an agronomist months ahead of time, and the agronomist puts out whatever you want. And so I had them put out cover crops and combinations and monocultures both. And we're standing there that day with the interpreter and the Russian farmers and ourselves, and I had this horrible flashback to getting under a desk as we're talking. And I thought to myself, I wonder if they realized how scared I was of the Russians during that period of time as a young boy in grade school. But fortunately, the desk prevailed and ultimately must have saved me. That and cleaning the glass off, cleaning the radiation off the glass. So those appreciate that, David, for bringing such a vivid memory back. So, great presentations, loved them all, okay? So some follow-up just thoughts from myself as we get into this step 2 period of time. And Mark mentioned your story. Can't tell you how important that is. And I can't tell you how much people want to hear it. And people want to know their grocer. They want to know their rancher. They want to know the person they buy the eggs from. Kathy and I have a number of local grocers, and they are all individual farms. And I can't tell you how important that is. And we know them, and we trust them. There's the trust factor. And so very, very, very vivid. And Jason brought up some things that brought some memories back for me as well. One of them was the Amish comment regarding the hay. And so for years I've monitored hayland in rainfall simulators, in just carbon, soil aggregation, all these items. And because we export on hayland, right? So we windrow it, we bale it, we take it off. What do we do with the next cutting? We windrow it, we bale it, we take it off. And over time, there's a degradation on hayland that when I first started monitoring soils, I didn't expect. And of course, the Amish know this. They're very good at what they do. And so that's an interesting thing. And then I appreciated Jason bringing up the comments in regards to farmers that are presently in so let's just say a tillage system or a semi, maybe somewhat of a minimum till system. There are somewheres on the plain, right? There's somewheres in there. And people look for off-ramps. And I think they know there's some benefit, but where's the off-ramp? How do I get to the off-ramp? Where is that exit? And so what we did locally through the soil district, we brought in the bankers. And we said, look, here's what we're looking at, and here's why we're looking at it. So we had some banker workshops. And the bankers, I was really impressed with a lot of their thoughts. And so then we learned some more from the bankers. One of the greatest quotes from one of the bankers we had was, yes, as bankers, we need to see the numbers, but we also need to get a peek behind the scenes to see if this is sustainable. And I think that said a lot right there. Is it sustainable? Can you do it? You can do almost anything 1 year. Can you keep doing it? Can you continue it? And therein lies a bit more of a scenario. And so what we did too, to address those concerns that Jason brought up, which show me a farm that doesn't have those. Show me a farm that doesn't have them. And so what we did to address those is we set up 5-acre plots on those farms. And we changed on those 5 acres. And I'd monitor the soils before. So I had them archived, I had the data, and then you go make your change. Because some of these things you're not going to see visually right away, okay? And so sometimes it meant changing a header. Sometimes we were only snapping the cob and leaving the residue all intact. We had different ways of doing this. But there's always a way. And so one thing I don't want you to do, I don't want you to have a meeting like this and not make some change. Doesn't have to be large. Doesn't have to be on significant size of your operation, but some change. Because then you keep going forward, okay? You keep going forward. So just thoughts from an old man. And that old man is David, not me. Okay, so, man, geology. I made 2 huge mistakes in college. One was called geology and one was called soils. Those are huge mistakes for me. And so this one shows what I think Mary talked about this morning. The microbial is way older, right? The microbial population, hugely old. Every state, I think, has a book like this. This is North Dakota's. It was written by our geologist, our state geologist. His name was Bloomley. He was a really good writer, and he described everything in North Dakota and gave us the why. So we have a big oil field in North Dakota, the Bakken. It's huge. It has oil without end. And so the interesting thing is another formation below that someday. These are 3-mile lines now. Below that, another field. So the interesting thing on the Bakken is when the Bakken was created, it wasn't physically located where it is now. When the Bakken was formed, it was near the equator. Make sense? Yeah, plate tectonics, remember that term that you tried to forget as soon as you heard? And so when whole continents shift and move, so it shifted it to a different location. And one day it was partly in Montana, partly in Saskatchewan, and part in North Dakota. And so you look at all these things and where are we going? And then one day we appeared on the record, right? We kind of looked like humans, but there were other entities as well that looked a little like humans. Some were Neanderthals and some were others, but the humans prevailed. And so you look at that whole scenario and you kind of find your way on this whole thing. And so I find it really helpful to have the geological component when I start looking at something, okay? So my goal is I want to farm forever. If you don't have a goal, I'd encourage you to get one and identify your resource concerns. A lot of these are universal, right? Wind and water erosion and water quality and quantity. They have been with us forever. And so when we make these changes and we do some monitoring, so we make a 5-acre change on Jason's neighbor or whoever, something that there's no big risk on, then you start looking at these things because these are foundational. These are foundational. When you have wind erosion, you are transporting your phosphorus, right? And unless they're giving your phosphorus away, it's a really good idea to keep it in place and recycle, recycle, recycle. So where's the world's largest conveyor belt? 65 miles long, where is it? 65-mile long conveyor belt, where is it? Northern Africa. What does it bring to the ocean? Phosphorus. You can look at it on Google Maps or whatever. Who lines up to get that phosphorus? Everybody. Okay, so you start looking at these things and you say, wow, Clay colloids are what holds your phosphorus. When you have wind erosion, your phosphorus is leaving. It's not leaving alone either, but that's a big one right there. So the O-horizon, we talked briefly on that. It's how soil's formed in forest and grasslands over geological time. You got to have an O-horizon. If you don't have somewhat of an O-horizon, you're not going to have a real big one on cropland, but it can be green. It can be green or brown. Okay, preferably a combination. Then you're going to build soil. If you don't have that, you're never really going to build soil. You're going to stay on that 65-mile-long conveyor belt, picking up phosphorus and moving it in. And so there's always a way, okay? So a few scenarios I just want to walk through. This is a field at the Minokan farm. We're broadcasting 3 annuals here. I'm putting in 3 annuals, and it's going into winter wheat. And so this is spring, this is April. No herbicide, no insecticide, no fungicide, no commercial fertilizer. That can't work. Okay, that was kind of a joke, so I mean, it was a little quick, right? I'm gonna back up. Okay, took everything out, right? Took everything out. Now, I'm a monitoring guy, so now I'm gonna monitor before and after, right? So the Minokan farm doesn't use it doesn't use insecticides or fungicides or commercial fertilizer. It does use herbicide at this point, but we're starting to ramp down on herbicide. Easier to say than do. Right? That one's a challenge. So this was the field. Notice the color. A lot of our wheat fields don't have this color anymore. You know, we kind of lost that color. And so we're trying not to use a desiccant. A lot of our fields in North Dakota have a fall desiccant put on before harvest. So when you're farming 10,000, 20,000 acres, you're looking at a desiccant because you don't want to stop anything. So, okay, I get that, but back in the day we used to windrow, didn't have the desiccant on the wheat. So if the desiccant's on the wheat, it's in the food supply. And so that's a concern. So we don't use a desiccant, right? And if it rains on our windrows, then we just have to wait. But that's what we've done forever. So that was a great scenario, and now you also see next to my spade, you see the green, that's the 3 clovers. So now we have the cover. Now we're harvesting sunlight, putting energy in. Got to have a constant green plant. It's one of the principles, right? The wheat builds aggregates. I like that. This is my extractor. So it's compost and soil mixed, and then I also have native soil and native grasses added, and then I have a number of individual plants that I've put in as well, both forbs and grasses and annuals and biennials. Why? Because we grow them all. And so I have all these green plants on there, and so when it rains, it's a passive system. You can see the air ventilation system on the end of it with the tubes, and when it rains, I catch the leachate. In the leachate is humic acid, in the leachate is minerals, and also a large population of biology. And so that becomes the seed coating, right? So that's the seed coating, and then it also gets supplied again as a foliar. On those green plants, the microbes are inside the plant, they're outside of the plant. They're going in and out, as was described earlier, with the rhizophagy system. You said it very well. So they go in, get stripped off of everything, but probably DNA, they get puked out again in the end, they line up, repopulate, probably come in how many times? We don't know. And so pretty fascinating stuff. We always knew the forest and the grasslands fertilized themselves, but until rhizophagy was identified, we knew it happened, but we couldn't tell you how it happened, okay? Pretty fascinating. So that's just, I catch the leachate in that insulated livestock tank. If it's out of the sun and well insulated like that, it'll last indefinitely, okay? So once we put it into the planter, it goes into the liquid tanks in the planter, and we'll probably add some sugar. Remember, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, they make sugar. You add sugar into a system, you're probably going to see something beneficial. Remember humic and fulvic acid, you add them into a system, you're probably going to see something beneficial because they are the system, right? They are the system. Okay, this is OP corn, so there's no one owns this really at all, so I can go ahead and I can harvest seed. So on a variety like this, it'll reflect its parent, okay? So it's not a GMO, it's not a hybrid of that nature, so it's an open pollinated. And so this is the response to the biology. So when I put it on a species like this, you'll see a significant increase in the biomass. So the biomass is 3 times. So if you look on the upper right-hand side, it's about 3 times the size of the biomass, and then it breaks it down to the biology and the fungal component. Fungal especially being a holy grail. And so that corn does have a herbicide on it. It has no fertilizer, and it has no insecticide and no fungicide, but it's a nice field. And so when you have soil health, a lot of these things start to come together. We did actually harvest this and had some ground by our good folks at Guardian Grains near Minot, North Dakota. Some of you are familiar with the Guardian Grains. And so it was a very popular party favor that we used at our events because Kathy and I packaged it. Soil health principles on the bag, a recipe on the other side of the bag, and people came back and asked for more. And so those are things that can promote, I think, health and those type of activities. As far as seeding into things, the lower right-hand corner, when we started planting green, that's kind of how we started, right? Because haven't done it, haven't failed much at it yet, right? This is a number of years ago now, but we kind of, the lower right-hand corner, corn, when we started putting in broadleaves, because broadleaves can't build much for aggregates, but we still use broadleaves. And by that, I mean flax, I mean canola, I mean soybean, I mean pintos. And so when we put them in green, there is nothing that opens and closes easier than this environment. So this environment opens easily, but more importantly, closes easily. Because closing is the task. You don't want to just close it on the surface where it bows. So if you walk around with a spade most all of your days and you put it into that seed trench, you can see it bowed in the wrong condition where you didn't crush that seed trench. Then you get into people like Jason described. Are they going to be happy in that environment? No, because their previous environment closed easily, right? That's one of the reasons they were using it. Now you're looking at stepping into this scenario, not a whole easy task, but now you want to find an easy way to open and close that seed trench. Hugely important. And so this one, when you're going in to a full height like this into a cereal rye, it's really interesting to walk in there because it's full of ladybugs. And so it's just a real interesting environment with all the wildlife and the nesting. We're in the flyway, so you're going to find a lot of habitat. So this one I sickle mowed. So again, I took the herbicide out and I sickle mowed it. I'm talking about 2 9-foot sickle mowers, and we'd call them double 9s, right? It's a mower, right? A sickle mower. And so we mowed it, and then for 3 weeks I wore a bag over my head until it came up, and then I took it off and I acted like I always knew it would come up, right? Because that's how we roll, right? And so there you are, a scenario that really, to me, that's you figure out a way. And if you come together as a group, as a team, as a group, you can figure out a way. If you come in as one individual, that's a tough road. Okay. So this one is soybean that was planted green into winter wheat. And you want the winter wheat now has become a cover crop. And the cover crop needs to be in 6 to 8 weeks before you terminate it. Why? Because in the first 6 to 8 weeks of a green plant's life, you get the carbon sugar exudate. So you want it in at least that long. Then you're checking all the boxes on cover crops. Plus it's a high carbon enough material then where it'll form some additional residue for you, because we have bare soils all the time, and it's so hard to keep it there. And the healthier they get, the more challenging it is, because then it really starts to ramp up. So this is since 2000, we started in 2009, And so there's been no commercial fertilizer, fungicide, insecticide since then. So this field, 3.7% soil organic matter, pH is 7.0. I think the perfect or ideal soil talks about 6.4. And a lot of times you'll see 6.4 to 6.7. I like ranges a little better. And so you start looking at that. And then I also have Malic 3. So Malic 3 was 21. We've never added phosphorus. So since we started in 09, no phosphorus has been added, but our phosphorus levels are quite high because we've made phosphorus available. You all most likely have quite high phosphorus totals in your soil if you do a total mineral, but you can't get to it, right? Because it's locked. And so you have to have plant diversity to unlock it. And plant diversity, especially a little buckwheat in your cover crop, a little flax in your cover crop, a little oat in your cover crop, you're going to start to see an improvement in your phosphorus availability. It doesn't create phosphorus, but it starts to unlock it. Most of the phosphorus we've applied since we started putting on commercial fertilizer is probably still in the soil if you haven't lost it with wind erosion. Okay, boss, I'm going to bring her home. When you show 1 minute, I'm getting off the stage. It's done. Okay, this is a fall seeded. I like brown and green. So I got brown, so I got dead litter. The brown is giving off CO2. The green is bringing in CO2. You got to always bring energy into your soil. If I don't have that green there, I got no energy coming in because the CO2, the carbon in the dead litter, most of that will go to the atmosphere. That's carbon stewardship. That's part of the carbon cycle. It should. It's supposed to. The green plant's job is to bring it into the soil, and it will. And so you start looking at this is what I want to see in the fall. If I have a window, this is what I'm going to do. How about in the high tunnel? I need a cover crop in the high tunnel. And so again, we grow mostly broadleaves, right? A lot of broadleaves, not exclusively, but quite a few. So I want to build back aggregates. So I'm going to bring in some diversity. I want to build back carbon. I want some energy in these boxes. And sometimes I get overzealous. Okay, that was kind of a little bit of North Dakota humor, big, tall cover crop, right? Okay, a little overzealous. And so you can bring it in pretty big. Because then you're farming in a high tunnel. That's like farming in the tropics. Wet, hot, and these warm seasons are really going to take off. That one I'm going to chop up a bit because he's not going to cooperate real well if I don't, right? So I'm going to bring that one into place, but it's kind of fun to watch it grow. Normally I terminate them with taking away sunshine. So after about 10 days, I can plant into that material. And there's virtually no weeding. It virtually eliminates weeding. So sometimes if we have a group coming through and we have one of these boxes a little weedy, I stop there and talk and take my time. And the group invariably just start weeding. So it's just like something to do while this old guy's talking, so I'm going to pull these weeds. So anyway, it's something that can be done. I monitor all these boxes every year. I know their pHs, I know their carbon levels, I know the calcium, I know what's in these boxes, okay? Alex Fraser is a guy in South Dakota I need to give some credit to. Normally, if you live in North Dakota, you don't give South Dakota any credit for anything, okay? But he's worthy. He's a farmer, not a smaller farmer, and he's also a crop consultant. And we brought him to the Minokan farm this summer because he plants his cover crops with his soybeans. So my new elevator speech when I'm dealing with a corn bean producer, my new elevator speech is, how much diversity are you putting with your beans? You look like a really progressive operator. I'm sure you have quite a few. Tell me about it. And then it's on, right? And so consequently, he'll put in oat and rye. This is in the spring, same day the beans go in. Oat, rye, flax is what he used. So I replicated it this year, and then we put him in that field. And then you want to leave it for 6 to 8 weeks. Why? because those green covers are going to give you carbon sugar exudates, and they're going to build aggregates. Okay? And when this field was terminated the day before, this one was sprayed with a herbicide, the day before, when you looked at it from the side, it looked like an oat field. It didn't look like a bean field. It looked like an oat field. And so consequently, I think this guy is really figuring out a way to grow beans responsibly. If you're going to grow them responsibly. And they can build you aggregates, they can build you carbon. See what happened on the stable water aggregates from spring to fall in that field? They went from 25% to 49%. The soybean and the flax did not build those aggregates. That was built by the rye and the oat. You can do this. And you can make it stronger, and you can make the yield stronger. His yields have improved. He writes a prescription for what his field doesn't have and the resource concerns he does have, okay? And that's how this field looked. And then I do leaf analysis on the left side. And keep in mind, there's no commercial fertility in here, never has been. And so now you can see adequate leaf analysis. So can you do it? Yes. Now, if I keep growing soybean on there year after year after year, is it going to stay looking like that? No. And that is not soil health principles, okay? And so you're looking at you needing crop diversity. So if you look at that one, it was 4.2% soil organic matter, 6.9 pH. I'm pretty happy with that. Total N at that time is 33 parts per million. Farm boy math, that's roughly 66 units of N sitting in that field in the end of July, growing a crop, okay? And if you look at the malic, it was 17 at that time. Those beans have used a bit of that malic, but the covers will release more. And then I got my total biology, and so I have workers. So John Sticka's book, I hope you get a chance to read it. John told me one time, these workers, it depends what you do with them. If you take them up to the top of the steps and push them down, and they're all beat up, and then at noon you don't give them anything to eat, and then you keep them there past midnight, he said, that's a tough environment for them to get anything done. Or, he said, if you go ahead and give them a break, give them some food and nourishment, and treat them in a humane manner, he said, it's going to be amazing what they'll do. And he is so right. So this one is a GMO. So this one was I have one field, that's a corn bean field, nothing else. No cover crops, nothing else. Not this particular one, but I have one like that. This one I put following a cover crop because I wanted to see what it would do. And you can, first of all, look at the cover. Can you see bare soil? First question when you're on a field, can you see bare soil? Okay. And so I don't see much bare soil. It was a full season cover, managed graze the year before. And then this is how it panned out. And so you can look at the malic 3, 30 parts per million. That's a high malic 3, and you are into July. You've had a lot of phosphorus in that field. Never added it, okay? But it's available. 4.1% soil organic matter, that works for us. And the biology is over 10,000, and the fungi over 13. And you can see the leaf analysis. No commercial fertilizer. Can you do this? You can. You can, but it takes some effort. It's a task to work toward it. This is what a total mineral looks like. So a total mineral would look like this if you ever decided to do one, just for the assurance that, yes, I do have this in my field. And then it's the biology's job to switch it from organic to inorganic and transport it into the plant. That's their job. Treat them like it's that job, right? These are field averages. I'm going to try to end on this. So soil organic matter level, after all these years of no commercial fertility, the average 3.8, my highest is 5.3, my lowest is a corn bean field at 2.4. That's not a surprise, although monitoring will surprise you many times, but that's not really a surprise. You want the nitrogen. I like the nitrogen at 2/3 organic and 1/3 inorganic because our native grasslands in North Dakota mimic that. That's what the native grassland does. It gives you some food, but it doesn't give you the whole big plate of food when you're only 1 year old. feeds you gradually and keeps feeding you. That's different than applying 200 pounds of urea and seeing an instant green up and a huge amount of nitrogen that will never go into that plant. Because we know from experience, we can't get half of the fertilizer in the plant. We know this. We've known this forever. If you've taken Soils 201 in college, you know this. We can't get that fertility into that plant. And the higher your rate, the worse your percent. And so this is not unknown. Phosphorus, is that the 1 minute or the stop sign? Okay, 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. So the phosphorus level, 33 malic. If you're on 25 or higher, that's high. Okay, never added phosphorus. But plant diversity makes it available, unlocks it. Okay, so I'm going to just move right on here. The ruminant makes food available on day one. That's the difference. When you bring livestock in, the corn stalk doesn't have to decompose over a long period of time to feed the biology. It goes through the fermentation process, food available day one. That's the difference. And here's what happens. On the left, we fed the neighbor's 220 cows for 3 weeks. You can see the line. And on the right, that's the summer. 4 years later, you can still see the line. 4 years later, you can still see the line. Do livestock make an impact? The answer to that is yes. They do make an impact, huge impact. The primary difference in the soil analysis was the pH. There was more carbon on the right-hand side, and it helped lower my pH. I'm done. I can't. I was waiting for you to show me stop because I'm just stalling now. I had nothing. I got nothing. It was really great visiting with you folks. Thank you so much.